In 1945, the most devastating war in human history finally ended. But deep inside an isolated Philippine jungle, one highly disciplined soldier completely refused to believe the empire had fallen. For the next 30 years, he waged a terrifying one-man guerrilla war, fighting entirely against a phantom enemy created by his own unbreakable loyalty. In late 1944, the Japanese Empire was actively losing the brutal Pacific theater of World War II. Desperate to stall the advancing American forces, a highly trained 22-year-old intelligence officer was deployed to Lubang Island. His commanding officer gave him a set of incredibly strict, terrifyingly absolute final orders before leaving him behind. He was ordered to wage a ruthless, invisible guerrilla war, and under absolutely no circumstances was he ever allowed to surrender. He was strictly forbidden from taking his own life. He was told to fight until the Imperial Army finally returned. Just 8 months later, atomic bombs fell on Japan and the Empire officially and completely surrendered. To save the soldiers scattered across isolated islands, Allied planes dropped hundreds of thousands of paper leaflets directly over the deep jungles. The young officer found the papers in the mud. He read the surrender orders and immediately made a devastating psychological miscalculation. Trained specifically in the dark arts of psychological warfare, his brain completely convinced him the leaflets were fake American propaganda. Refusing to be tricked, he gathered his 3 remaining comrades and retreated deep into the dark, punishing mountains of the island. They officially entered a state of absolute, pure survival. The war was over for the world, but for them, it was just beginning. Decades slowly passed. To survive, the men became absolute phantoms, executing incredibly stealthy raids on local farming villages at night. They survived by aggressively stealing rice and cattle, engaging in brutal lightning-fast shootouts with the terrified local police. The Japanese government repeatedly sent search parties into the jungle using loudspeakers to beg the men to surrender. They still refused. Eventually, the brutal isolation and deadly shootouts took their toll. One by one, his companions were violently killed or surrendered. By 1972, almost 30 years after the war ended, the isolated intelligence officer was officially the absolute last man standing. Back in his homeland, he was officially declared dead by the government. To the entire modern world, he was a ghost. His survival relied on an absolute, terrifyingly rigid military discipline. He refused to let his mind or his equipment degrade. He carefully saved every single bullet, using coconut oil to keep his heavy rifle and his razor-sharp samurai sword in perfect condition. He meticulously repaired his rotting uniform using fibers ripped from tree bark, ensuring he always looked like a proper imperial officer. He treated the local island farmers as dangerous enemy combatants, executing lightning-fast nighttime raids to aggressively steal their rice and cattle. When the local police aggressively hunted him through the jungle, he engaged in brutal, highly lethal shootouts to defend his territory. He constantly gathered intelligence on his imaginary enemy. When he stole a modern radio from a farmer, he listened to world news. But his paranoia was absolute. When he heard news of massive modern cities in Japan, he concluded it was all fake propaganda. When he saw modern commercial jets flying high above the jungle, he rationally assumed they were advanced Japanese bombers heading to America. Then, in 1974, a young, eccentric Japanese college dropout decided to travel the world to find 3 mythical things. He famously declared he was looking for a panda, the abominable snowman, and the legendary ghost soldier hiding in the Philippines. The young explorer bravely traveled deep into the deadly jungle. Within just 4 days of searching, he achieved the absolutely impossible. He had set up a small camp when suddenly the heavily armed, wildly paranoid ghost soldier leaped violently from the bushes. The old soldier stood there, his rifle raised, fully prepared to execute the young man as an enemy spy. But the young explorer didn't panic. He calmly raised his hands, bowed deeply, and told the soldier that Japan had lost. He explained that the war had been over for 30 years. The hardened soldier listened in absolute crushing silence. Despite seeing the modern photographs the explorer brought, the soldier's unbreakable discipline refused to let him accept the truth. He stated he would only lay down his weapons if his original, direct commander ordered him to do so. The explorer agreed to the impossible terms. He traveled all the way back to Japan to find the retired commander. The young explorer successfully located the aging military commander, who had long since retired and become a quiet bookstore owner. Stunned to learn his soldier was still fighting in the jungle, the elderly commander agreed to fly to the Philippines immediately. In March 1974, the aging commander marched deep into the sweltering jungle, wearing his old, formal military uniform. He arrived at the pre-arranged clearing. Suddenly, the phantom soldier emerged from the thick brush, standing at perfect, rigid attention. Despite 30 years of absolute hell, his rifle was flawlessly oiled, his uniform was neat, and his discipline was unbroken. With tears in his eyes, the elderly commander unrolled a formal piece of paper and officially relieved him of duty. The horrifying reality finally crashed down on the isolated soldier. His 30-year war had been fought entirely for absolutely nothing. Weeping openly, he officially surrendered his perfectly maintained rifle, his 500 rounds of ammunition, and his gleaming samurai sword. When he finally returned to Japan, he was greeted by massive, cheering crowds who viewed him as a national hero. But the modern, hyper-commercialized, brightly lit world of 1974 deeply terrified and alienated the old soldier. He could not comprehend the massive skyscrapers, the roaring traffic, or the complete loss of traditional imperial values. He realized that his 3 closest friends had died in the jungle, fighting for an empire that had surrendered decades ago. Unable to cope with the noisy, chaotic modern world, the legendary jungle survivor chose to isolate himself once again. He moved to Brazil, bought a massive remote cattle ranch, and spent his remaining years living quietly far away from civilization. His story is a terrifying testament to the absolute unbreakable power of human psychology and extreme mental discipline. He survived the deadliest jungle on Earth simply because he believed he had no other choice. He was a phantom. If one highly trained soldier can intentionally disappear into the wilderness for 30 years, imagine an entire army vanishing. In the year 108 AD, the Roman Empire controlled the absolute greatest, most unstoppable military machine on Earth. The legendary 9th Legion was dispatched to northern Britain to crush a massive violent rebellion of local Scottish tribes. 5,000 heavily armed men marched north. They were never seen again. No bodies, no armor, and no graves were ever found. Did a massive tribal ambush slaughter 5,000 men, or did the Roman Empire intentionally erase them from history to hide a terrifying defeat? Click the video on your screen to uncover the absolutely terrifying unsolved military mystery of the missing 9th Legion.